Hello future tech leaders, I am Sindhuja. Based on my own experience, I know that learning the right skills can shape our future. What if I say learning was as thrilled as the tech world itself? There we go. A cloud foundation, that's exactly what you will experience. From day one, you will be immersed in the interactive sessions and expert-led courses that covers most of the widely used technologies in the zone of data science to cloud computing, which brings more light to the life of a techie. I'm so excited to help you and unlock the true potential of a technology. Well, then why to wait? Let's see what it unfolds.
In terms of network traffic, we have understood about the options over here. We saw some of the options in terms of how do you create these resources. In terms of Azure Firewall. Now, this is a very important aspect for number of organizations. Like we mentioned about Web Application Firewall, WAF Gateway. Now, this is very specific to web applications. What about firewall solutions which is within a virtual network or within subnets? Implementation of hub and spoke mechanisms. Web traffic I can understand. I can filter those resources there. But what if I want to filter some of the communications within subnets or within virtual networks? While we are doing your VNet peering. Now, in those scenarios, how do you make it work? Here, what people do is they either have their own service. They have their pre-existing service being used, like Palo Alto or Cisco or Barracuda. They already have a license for it. If they have these licenses of third-party solutions or third-party software, we can create something called as NVA, Network Virtual Appliance. Configure it and work with it. That's possible over here. If you don't have any such pre-existing resources or pre-existing solutions, we can make use of Azure Firewall. We can make use of Azure Firewall Manager, where we can create all the firewall rules over here. Which of these DNS is being allowed? Which of these DNS is being blocked? All these things we can configure on the Azure Firewall. This one, you can use it for web applications or even for internal communications as well. Now, if you see this works on L3 to L10. If you see the range over here, the range is much broader as compared to your web application firewall or your application gateway resources. You decide what will be the spectrum of it and what are the options that you want to configure over here. Now, some of the attributes that we mentioned earlier, like HTTP attributes and all those things, those values or those settings may not be available here. But we can configure your DNS level resources. Say, for example, I don't want any of my users connected to the virtual machine to go and connect to a specific set of sites. I want to block those sites or allow certain set of sites. Those things I can do by using Azure Firewall. There are two set of rules which are there. One is application collection, application rule collection, and network rule collection. There are two collections available. Within these collections, we can add set of rules which are there. If you look at your firewall implementation, this is how it happens. You will have your workload subnet. You will have your jump box subnet. This workload subnet that we have, this will have your database or any other critical resource that you want to protect. Second member that you see over here is your jump subnet. This is your jump box. Whenever any user, if you see the normal behavior, how will happen? Anyone can connect to Jumpbox because this is a public IP. Jumpbox will help you connect to your workload subnet. That's a normal behavior of Azure. Now, if I want to modify this, if I want to change this required behavior, saying that any communication happening with Jumpbox subnet should first go to firewall subnet. Right. After firewall has gone through all the rules, verified everything, then it should go to workload subnet. What we are doing is we are changing the default behavior. We are changing the default routing. And that's the reason why we will have to add a custom routing over here by using a routing table. Once we are creating a routing table over here, what we are ensuring is we are modifying the way how this communication will happen. We are modifying the way how the default communication will happen. And this default communication is modified by using a custom routing table, or it is also called as user-defined routing. First step comes to jump subnet. From jump subnet it will go to. From jump subnet, if anybody tries to connect to workload subnet, it will take him to firewall subnet. From firewall subnet, it will refer to the routing table. In the table, it is written that once the request has been verified, it has to go to workload subnet. Now, if any of the incoming request is improper or there is any issues over there, it should automatically block it or reject it. Only appropriate requests should go to the DMG-based resources or your workload subnet. Does this make sense to everyone? Let's take a quick example over here. How do you create a firewall? Azure Firewall over here. Let me go to Azure documentation. Let's go to networking over here. Within networking, you have Azure Firewall. This is a quick example that we can look at. Implementation of a basic architecture for firewall subnet. How we can create a firewall rule. How we can specify a default routing over here. And make sure whenever a user tries to connect to this resource, rather than going to the predefined route, it should go to the custom routing. Let's go to the URL. Let's create required resources for the same. First step that you see is creation of a resource group. In my case, I already have a resource group, but I will still create a new resource group. Map it to the given requirement which is there. Testing of testfire.org. Let's mention the resource group here. This is the first step done. that is, creation of resource group. Let's create a virtual network over here. Let's create a virtual network. Let me check if I already have a virtual network. Let me delete this. If I don't delete it, it will take the same default IP range, which is 10.2/t. This is associated with application gateway. That's why it's not allowing me to delete it. Let me go to virtual networks. Test firewall IP address slash. Let me add a subnet over here. Let me change the subnet name. And if you see the address range over here, it's a smaller range, that is /26. 1 slash. It shows a warning saying that this is an overlapping IP address with VNet. But I know that I have already started the deletion process. Let's add one more subnet over here, which is workload subnet. Let me specify the IP address for this as well. Right. Am I doing a mistake? This is correct. Under subnet select default. Actually, I should have 3 subnets over here. One is a default subnet. One is the firewall subnet. And second is the third one, is the workload subnet. Let me modify the first one. Let me add it once again. Lu slash. This is the default subnet. Right. I have 3 subnets over here. What we have done is we have got the resources created over here required for our firewall. Let's create a virtual machine in our resource group. Ration host is not required. Firewall is something that we are creating right now. Let's go to virtual machines. And let's add a new machine here. While you are creating these machines, you can go ahead and use availability. Set availability zone. Let me take 2019 data center. Let's add a new machine. Any details on the port? Under inbound port rules, select none, which means we don't have any external connectivity over here. Disk standard HDD. As far as networking is concerned, the subnet is workload subnet. Test firewall. Then we have a workload subnet. No public IP because for this machine, we can't connect to this machine directly. If you remember the diagram that we have discussed, only IP is none. What we are doing is we are creating a demilitarized zone where we are saying this workload machine that we have created should not be having any connectivity options. Let's give it a moment while it creates. Let me proceed further. I have already deleted that VNet to make sure that IP range is not overlapping, because that was one of the issues which it was showing. I have resolved that. Let's go to the next section over here. That is creation of a firewall. Right. Let's search for firewall over here. In this scenario, what you see is this firewall basically is a VM. Or I would say firewall basically is a service which is created using a VM behind the scene. But this is entirely managed by Microsoft in terms of high availability. What are the number of instances required for it? All these things will be taken care by Microsoft. As far as region is concerned, we have all these resources in Southeast Asia. Let me continue with that. Availability zone. Whatever options you want to select over here. Let's go to Firewall Classic. Let's use the existing virtual network. As far as public IP is concerned, you just have to specify a name for it. Now, One thing that you will have to understand over here is, once it comes to public IP with firewall, it will be standard and static IP address. This IP address will not change. Now for deployment in process. SRB what Vim is ready. No external communications here. No public IP. We only have a private IP here. 10Z 2.4 because it is part of your workload subnet. Now, while this is getting created, let's go to the next member over here. That is creating a. I'm not sure why they have made this mistake, because this is not a default route. You don't create a default route. Default route is already there. What you do is you create a custom route, which means a user-defined routing. Right? Once you go to your networking, you can select a route table there, or we can check for route table here on the search window, search box. Go to route table, and we can create a new routing table here, because what we are trying to do is, we are seeing the default routing table which is being given is not what I want, which means every request which is coming to the jump box will be directly associated with the machine which I don't want. I want to change that default behavior of Azure. That's the reason why we create a custom routing table here. In this custom routing, what we are doing is we are saying any request coming to the workload subnet should first go to the firewall. Firewall should approve it, or firewall should verify that request. And once it is being verified, approved, then it should go to the workload subnet. You are intercepting that request. And it's not just about request. It can also be about responses. You can intercept both of it, request as well as response. We are done with this. Let's go to the firewall route, which is the current route that we have created. Let's go to the subnet section. Once you have this table being created, you have to associate this table with appropriate workload subnet, with appropriate subnet over here. Right. Let's do that. Let's go to associate. Here what we are saying is, any request coming to this workload has to first go through the firewall For that, we are making provision over here. Let's proceed further. Let's go to the root section. Now table is being associated. What is the routing table is being associated? Now what is the value inside the table? Nothing. We will have to mention the value inside the table. Let's do that. Collection. The empty collection is there. In that collection, let's mention the root name over here. Let's mention the address prefix that you would want. If you see this address prefix, this is basically saying any request coming from any environment. It's more like a global prefix. What is the hop type that you would want? Hop type instance. It should go to the which next member. Here, what you can do is, you can either outright reject all the requests by saying none, or send it to a specific virtual network where you have the firewall, wherever you have that firewall. Or you can go for a virtual appliance, as far as this virtual appliance is concerned. This virtual appliance will use a private IP address of the firewall. This virtual appliance will be private IP address of the firewall, which I am not aware about. How do I get that? I will have to go to the firewall. And within firewall, I will be able to capture what is the value of that private IP of that firewall. Let me go to all resources. This is done. And this is where I have the firewall private IP. Private IP over here. What we are saying is, any request coming, which is trying to connect to this machine, the workload machine, should be redirected to this virtual appliance. Now please be careful. This virtual appliance could be your own virtual appliance as well. Instead, it can be your follow all to implementation, or it could be any one of your custom implementations. In this scenario, we are using your firewall, and we have mentioned its IP address over here, private IP over here. Any request coming here should go to the virtual appliance, and this is the IP address of the virtual appliance. Once we are done with this, let's go to the next section over here, which is configuration of an application rule. Once we have this firewall created, by now what we have done is, we have redirected the request saying that any request going to the workload subnet should be routed or should be moved by this firewall. But what does that firewall consist of? Firewall consists of no rules as of now. Let's go ahead. Configure the firewall over here. Let's go to the rules section. And you will be able to see there are three sets of rules. Network rules, application rules, and net tools. That is network. Right now, what we are doing is, we are creating an application rule. Let's go ahead. create an application rule over here. Now, while you are creating an application rule, you can specify the connection name. You can specify the name of the application collection rule. What is the priority that you would want for these rules? And what is the action you want to perform? Allow D. It's up to you. If it comes to, you can have tag if FQDs. Which FQD name you want to allow? Coming to this source, what is the protocol that you want to check for? Now, what we are doing is, we are trying to control the outgoing request from that machine, the workload machine, right? If it is trying to connect to Google, other things you can block. Once we have, and we can have number of such rules over here. Apart from this, application rule, we can also configure the network rule over here. Let's add a network rule collection. As part of network rule, we can specify a DNS over here. Priority, whatever value you want. Here, if you see the rules, you have rules for IP addresses, rules for service tags, rules for FQDNs as well. Let's create a rule for let's specify IP addresses over here. This is a rule for UDP. This is concerned. Whatever is the source value, destination IP address. This value we will have to configure. We have to configure this DNS values, which we will do as we proceed further. We are opening up the DNS over here, allowing the DNS connectivity on. Network rule. Let's do this once again. Because the previous one was not complete, it did not allow me to save this value. IP addresses. Destination address. Anything which is going to the workload subnet has to go via this DNS. port is P. Priority is 200 for this. This has already been added. Why is it stuck? What is the error? It says the previous application rule is not completed as of now. Unless that completes, it is not allowing you to add a new one. Just give me a moment. Let me try it again over here. The new rule has been added within Firewall Manager. We can specify all the rules over. There becomes a more loosely coupled kind of architecture. Machines are separate and rows are separate. Third set of rule, that is your DNet rule NAT rule collection. Mentioning about the rules. You have got the network rule collection done. Application rule collection done. I was mentioning about specifying the DNS as SRV work virtual machine. Let me do that. This will require restart of the machine. It will automatically restart once I have made the change over here in the DNS settings. Here, what we are specifying is the DNS servers. If you remember, we have used both these values, both these IP addresses while we were configuring the network rule 2T924 follow those T4. Once you save this, this will automatically restart the machine. Or if you want to restart on your own, you can do it from here. Let's go back to firewall once again and add the DNet rule over here. Now, the purpose of this DNet rule will be to help you log in. Here, if you see your DNet rule, this is for RDP connection. whatever priority value we want, network address translation. What we are trying to do is, by using the public IP assigned to the firewall, we can connect to our machine. I am not sure if you have done NAT to rules with your Azure load balancer. If you look at your Azure load balancer, within Azure load balancer, also we can do something similar. We can use the load balancer public IP and do a NATing into our machines. Behind the load balancer source type, any destination is the firewall public IP address which I am not aware about. I have to copy that value from there and then SRV private IP address. Let me go to the next tab. Get both these values. One is firewall public IP address and second is work machine private IP address. That is what we are associating. This is the public IP address of the firewall, translated address. The translated address will be virtual machine private IP address. This is what is called as network address translation. Whenever you do RDP onto the firewall public IP, it will connect over here. Translated port is T389 anywhere. Any questions, anybody? Are we understanding what we are doing? We are saying every communication over here should be going via DS servers. It should be going via the firewall, which is being created within the machine. It should allow only specific set of communications. Allow Google or allow Bing, whichever resources you want to apply over here. What control mechanism you want for inbound communication, outbound communication, those things. We can mention what you want to allow, what you want to deny, and then how do you connect to that machine. What is the mechanism of connecting to that machine? All these things we are governing over here. Chitna was mentioning about a very important point. Marsh, can we do the entire lab over here and what will be the steps? There are Microsoft provided labs which I am not sure if you are aware about. If you look at GitHub.io, based on the initial module, there is no lab. For the initial modules, there are no labs. But starting from module 5, then for 6, 10, 12, 14, there are labs over here for other modules, for other certifications like AZ104 or AZ284. There are many more such labs. But once people come to the architecting paper, Microsoft also assumes that you must have done most of those implementations there. They don't give you too many labs here in this section, but some of these things, like Chitna rightly mentioned, most of the architectural components you will be able to implement over here. Let me first share this URL with you all. Now step in. What you are supposed to do is, can you see this downloaded here? First thing you have to do is click on download it here and download a zip file. This zip file will have set of ARM templates using which you can quickly create some of the machines which is required, like what we are doing right now, creation of VNet, creation of subnet. Some of these things you can quickly create by using this ARM template. And all these ARM templates are here. Have I done it for myself? Yes, I have already downloaded it. I have these resources here. If I go to this file, can you see this? There are. If I try doing this myself, it will take more than 5 to 6 hours. I am not saying I can't do that, but it will take a lot of time. But I know what I am doing. I am creating a VNet. I am creating a subnet 192.2024, right? I have to build up a complex environment. All these things are part of this resource over here. Once you have downloaded that, now my request to all of you all would be, before we start doing this lab, we will have to first take up some time to understand what this entire scenario is all about. What are we trying to achieve through this? If you realize anything that we have in terms of availability sets, availability zones, load balancing solution, application gateway, everything is inside one example. Whatever we have discussed till now, all of these things is part of just one lab. These lab files we already have downloaded. For example, if I say AR and templates will, that reduces my practice abilities because it is already given. This morning I was trying to create 5 walls and other setup. That guy has given a GitHub entire setup in a batch cell by hand. He created a load balancer. He created 3 virtual machines. Everything was done on a Jeffy. If I take these templates labs, do you think doing manually, step by step, or this is better? It will not make much difference if I use these labs. Let me help you with that. See, even if I do manually, that's why I have in the initial modules, I did not give this lab, right? The reason being, by now, we know how to get virtual network by now. We know how to get a subnet. We know how to get virtual machines. What do you want to practice? You want to practice a creation of application gateway, creation of load balancer, creation of virtual machine skill set. Are you getting it? If you are investing time learning those advanced aspects, these basic entities should already have got created. The resources that you see or the JSON scripts that you see will help you create the foundational resources that you can build upon it and create the advanced resources. Is it making sense? Primary aspects, we know primary aspects. Once it gets created, now what you can do is you can start creating application gateway within application gateway. What all we can do within load balancer. How do I go and configure the backend pool? Those things we can do. Are you getting it? That is what is the focus area of these labs. Not forcing you to focus on the foundational aspects because we are aware about that. Focus on the high-end services. In my example, while I was doing it in the demo which I was doing, I could not show you the backend pool resources correct because I did not have any machines. In this case, you will be able to get all the required machines The foundational aspects that you need, virtual networks and all those resources. You just have to start working with the load balancer resources, high availability resources. Does it make sense? Still, if you feel that I have to create all these things on your own, no problem, you can do that. If you go to your ARM template, let me show you one of them. If I go to ARM template, I would come to know what all things are to be created. Here, if you see here when I go I do, what are the resources I need to create? Can you see there are? It says I have to create 2 virtual machines. What is the name of those virtual machines? What will be the Windows admin name? Windows admin password? What will be the type of machine? You want to create this machine manually. Go ahead, do that, no problem. But if you want to speed up things quickly, create 3, 4 machines, put them into a single subnet. It will be faster for you using these basic templates. I would recommend they use templates. Very true, even like mine. One more observation, like just running this script, is it quicker way to create virtual machines? Because that's what I observed. Actually, when I click on the create button here, you just change the name. If I go to PowerShell and when I run this script, they are pretty quick, actually correct. I would slightly have a different opinion here once you look at the PowerShell. See, please be careful of the PowerShell. PowerShell has 2 sets of commands. One will be creating each of these component by component, or the second is new Azure Resource Group Deployment. Which one are you talking about? I think the one in the portal. Both of them are there in the portal. Let me put it this way. There are 2 sets of commands. You have to understand which command you are using. One command is new Azure. This is also PowerShell. Second is new Azure Resource Group Deployment. I think the first one I am using, this one that you are using, is component by component. Oh, this is one by one and this will take time. Whereas the second one is new Azure Resource Group Deployment. This is using an ARM template. Oh, what we are doing right now is this one with the JSON script. Yes, this is with JSON script. Absolutely correct. Right now, what we are doing is this one. The top one is like giving the name and giving the resource group and everything. ARM template. Everything is inside that template itself. All the values, all the members are in that template. You don't have to specify it separately. It's like a SQL and PLSQL, correct? No, it's like SQL pre-written for you, absolutely correct. Column names from employee. You type in no, like I am just saying, like writing SQL scripts, running SQL script one by one outside in the command prompt. And the other one is like writing them all in the PLS, QL and running one script. Yes, absolutely correct. You may have a stored procedure and in that stored script everything is written, all the processing is being done and you just get the final output. It's like that. That analogy is correct. More like a PLSQ stored procedure. Just let me close out with this. Whatever we have done, we have a network rule collection created, application rule collection created, net rule being done. Now let's go to the last step here, connect to this environment, because I can't keep this running. It's an expensive resource. And finally, do not forget to like, share and subscribe to our channel.